Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's KidneyCAN Town Hall. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Brian Lewis. I'm the CEO of KidneyCAN. We're really thrilled to have participants joining us from across the country and around the world today, so thank you for taking time to be with us today. For those of you who might be new to KidneyCAN, we're a national patient advocacy organization where we're focused on accelerating cures for kidney cancer through research, advocacy, and collaboration. And our town halls are designed to provide practical, relevant information and to create space for meaningful conversations within this community. So today's discussion is Family Matters, and it's parenting and grandparenting with those with advanced RCC. And we're going to focus on this area. It's deeply personal. It's often difficult to navigate, but conversations with our children and with our grandchildren and others about a cancer diagnosis doesn't come with a roadmap, and so many patients are left figuring it out in real time. So we're here to help today on that topic. So we're intentionally centered today on the patient experience, and so we're really grateful to be joined by our moderator, Dr. Adam Stern, also by our panelists, Meryl Uranga, Carolyn Sarah, and Ryan Stedman, and they're going to share their perspectives on how they've approached these conversations within their own families. But I also got to thank our sponsors, Arcus Biosciences, Aveo, ASI, Exelixis, and Merck. Thank you for your support. This is a live Zoom webinar. It's going to have moderated questions and answers. We encourage you to submit questions throughout this session using the chat feature. And with that, thank you again for being here, for being a part of this important community. With that, I'm turning it over to Adam Stern to begin our discussion.
Adam. Thanks, Brian. Brian, it's always great to see you, and it's always great to participate in these kinds of KidneyCAN events. I want to take just a moment or two to describe some of the context that led to this particular event. For me personally, it strikes very close to home, as it does for a lot of the folks on the call. You don't get a roadmap or a guide about how to communicate with your children or families when this kind of thing strikes. For me, I was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer in 2018. At that time, I just had a baby under a year old to contend with, and it wasn't really on my mind that I would ever have to explain to him what was going on or why. And so here I am 8 years later, and treatments for kidney cancer have advanced, thankfully, and many of us are living longer with this disease. So just to fast forward through those 8 years, I've had to have lots of very difficult, very complicated conversations, not only with my older son, but now I have a younger son as well, who's 5 years old. So that's a different challenge. And so this topic is near and dear both to me, but also to everyone who deals with this disease. I know a lot of my panelists on the call with us here today have children and grandchildren of different ages. So with that, I'd like to open it up with the first question. I want to ask how you first shared your diagnosis with your family. And would anyone from the panel like to introduce themselves and take that one?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I'm Carolyn Sarah, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here today. So I was diagnosed, it's coming up to 4 years, April 25th, 2022. I'm very healthy. I was a runner. I ran a marathon just about a year before that. So definitely caught by, it was very sudden and quick and very, definitely caught by surprise about it. And at that time, I have two daughters, so they would have been 18 and 20 at that time. One was in second year university, and the other one was about to graduate from high school. So that was April. As you know, high school, everything kind of happens in May. So we didn't want to tell them anything until we had answers. Obviously, it took quite a while to narrow things down to determine it was kidney cancer. When I say April 25th, that's when it was first, like, you have a mass. And then it took a little while to get narrowed down. And we just kept waiting. My older daughter was going to Germany on a trip. Marina, my younger daughter, she was playing soccer. She had track. She had all these parties coming up. So we really just held it until, and to this day, I'm glad we did. And I asked them that, and they're like, yeah, there was no point in telling us because we didn't have answers. So we waited until it was May. I looked it up today, May 29th. So that's over a month. And I waited till Marina's last party. And my strategy and our strategy, we told them together, my husband and I, was to tell them separately. We didn't think this was something we wanted to do together because they both sort of have different personalities in that way. So on the Saturday night before the last party on Sunday, we told our oldest daughter. She handled it very well. We're not very emotional people. We're very, here's what's happening, here's what we're going to do, we've got this kind of thing. So we're not an emotional family, for sure. So I felt like she handled it well. And then I waited till Sunday night after the last party to tell Marina, our youngest daughter, and they really handled it exactly how each of them I predicted they would handle it. Obviously now, and we can talk about this later, I just recently told them again that I have a mass in my groin, so I'm going to be doing surgery soon. But they're at a whole different age now. They're 4 years later. My oldest daughter's just got into PA school, so you can imagine that's physician assistant. So now it's a whole different thing because I actually share everything with her, and I'm always trying to educate her on the patient side and all these things that have happened that hopefully she can benefit from as she pursues her degree. So,
congratulations, Carolyn. That's great that she's pursuing that. You mentioned something that I want to explore a little bit further for anybody on the panel, which is meeting your family members, your children, where they are at the time when you have to communicate with them, when you want to communicate with them. So it's so different as time passes when you're dealing, in your case, with someone in high school versus when they're about to pursue a career in medicine, for example.
Yeah, I can touch on that a little because I found that the personality differences were really important because I knew my kids very well. Just a little context is I have 4 children at the time of diagnosis, which will be 9 years tomorrow. They were between 17 and 27. So I have the older kids and I also have the grandkids, thankfully, since then. But I had an incidental finding for my diagnosis. So I was having a health crisis with acute appendicitis when I found out about the kidney cancer at the same time. So I didn't have the luxury of not telling. I could have technically held that back, but I really needed the support, and I needed to approach the kids the way that I always did, which was like informational, knowledge is power kind of thing. And the difference was that I did approach it differently with each one of them, knowing their personalities and reactions, as Carolyn kind of touched on. But I did it right away. And it was probably pretty scary when I look back. I might not have had the best judgment on that at the time, but it was, again, in a kind of a crisis situation. I was admitted right into the hospital to have emergency surgery on the appendix, and then all the kidney cancer stuff started coming down. Like, they didn't even dismiss me from the hospital because of all the testing that had to be done and everything. So I sort of had to let them know what was going on. It would have been very fishy if I hadn't. And, I felt that they were old enough. My youngest was junior in high school in 2017. So they were all growing up or grown up. And I just met them, as we're using that term, with each of their personalities. I knew, I had one son that would retreat and be very almost like in denial about it. And then I had another one who's very take action, my oldest, and he helped me go to appointments at first and everything, which is, super valuable when I look back on it. Because, as everyone on this panel knows, your head's spinning and there's so much to take in and so much to figure out and do at that time. And so that was my approach. And I have thought about it as maybe I should have been a little more sensitive, but the way that it unfolded, that was kind of how it had to be.
Yeah, so you remind me of something that I've noticed in dealing with this disease. Sometimes things are asteroids that smack the earth in your life, and sometimes it's a slow burn. Sometimes you have to think about how to manage something over months and years, and you have the ability to pace yourself with how you engage with the people around you. I think that you've done, it sounds like, incredibly well with that. Ryan, how about you? Can I bring you in on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. And thank you, Carolyn and Meryl, for sharing, and Adam for sharing. Appreciate the question today. And hopefully my story relates to some folks that are unfortunate and diagnosed at a little bit younger of age. My kids at the time, it was 4 years ago, similar to Carolyn. Mine was right around the holiday season. In fact, it was Thanksgiving Eve that I realized I was having some kind of medical emergency, couldn't breathe, flank pain, just very, nauseous, and thought it was a kidney stone, and ended up going into the emergency room and didn't leave the emergency room for a week. It was stage 3, clear cell. Luckily had a good surgery, and got to come home for the holidays, and we decided, similar to Carolyn, kind of pause for a second. My kids at the time were 5, 8, and 11, give or take a couple months on those things, but very young. And we were trying to figure out, they knew, dad had a surgery, he was in the hospital, he was sick, but we didn't get into, explaining what that was or what it may mean for the future. We kind of enjoyed the holidays. Things kind of got back to normal. Couldn't put the star on the tree, but for the most part, got back to the holiday traditions. And then we said, we do need to share with them that, dad is fighting cancer, has cancer, because there was a lot of medical appointments coming up. There was a lot of, we are a very emotional family, so that is one opposite of Carolyn's there. So we trying to figure out a way to tell your kids, right? And probably need a whole nother session on meeting the parents, because I think telling the parents and talking to your parents is probably more difficult for some of us. I still get asked every day how I'm doing, which is great, but at the same time, difficult to manage. But with the kids, the strategy we took was we wanted to be transparent and truthful so that, they know if it was a bad day, it was because of something, or most likely because of something. So I'm sure there's hundreds of books out there, but did a lot of research on Amazon and found a book that was kind of right in that age group. Someone I Love Has Cancer is the title of it. And again, I'm certain that there's several other hundreds of books out there like it, but it was relatable to kind of, let's meet them at bedtime, and we read the stories, and we kind of did it together, and each child has a different personality, certainly, but it kind of broke it down for them as to here's how we got here, here's where we're at, and here's what we're facing, but from a positive angle, because at the time, again, things were still going well and still are relatively tracking in a good direction. But as we all know, this can, an asteroid can come, it could be a slow burn. Thank you for that, Adam. But at the same time, we just wanted to keep them in the loop. And even to this day, 4 years later, we do constant check-ins, and we kind of keep them up to speed as to my next quarterly scan, and things went well, and we celebrate the wins together, and then we deal through any challenges as a family as well. And one other thing that I would recommend, try to live your life as normal as you can. I mean, at the end of the day, go to the soccer game, go to the baseball game. If it means you need to sit in the car and watch, then sit in the car and watch. So I think it's about adapting, and again, your family should be along for the ride as you feel appropriate and as it fits into your family lifestyle. But I appreciate the question. Thank you so much for letting me share.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, so have any of you experienced exchanges with your children or grandchildren that didn't go the way that you were expecting them to? That you had it in your head it was going to go one way and it just took a left turn and surprised you, either in a positive or negative or just different way?
I think both our girls have handled it quite well. I think it's a lot to do with obviously how I've handled it. And that's getting up every day, going to work. I've continued to work this entire time full time. I've traveled. I've literally just, yes, there have been some days where it didn't feel right, and I've had obviously side effects from immunotherapy and other things. But I wake up, I'm happy to be here, and every day I get with them, I'm honored to be here. And so if I can get out of bed and go, I'm going. And I think when you have that mentality, it reflects on the kids, and they continue on doing their thing too, because mom's doing her thing.
Yeah, so you're sort of leading by example through your actions. Yeah,
I would add,
There's no option. So you gotta just get up and go if you can.
I would add to that I think I got a little bit shook early on when everything settled, the dust settled, and surgeries had been done and things were kind of settling in, that people just kind of went back to their normal life and didn't ask that much about it. I had to volunteer information, and I think I didn't expect that. So you're saying, things that you didn't expect to go that way. I thought they would be more on top of me and worried about me. But again, maybe sort of like what Carolyn was saying, is that I tried to pick up my life and go back to normal and do the activities that I've always done. And I was working for quite a while and after diagnosis and everything. But I don't know if it was that or just wanting to avoid the topic, maybe a little denial, maybe a little, if we don't talk about this, it'll go away kind of thing. But that did surprise me. I had to adjust to that. It wasn't that I wanted them fawning over me or anything, but it was so much in the forefront of my mind all the time that I was kind of surprised that it wasn't for anybody else, or didn't appear to be.
It's hard. Yeah. It's hard not to be surprised, because just like we're figuring it out without a manual, everybody in our lives is also figuring it out, right? So nobody, if you put yourself in someone else's shoes and have had this experience where someone's dealing with a serious illness or a death in the family or anything along those lines, you're always trying to find that right balance of how much do they need me, how much do they want me, how much is it helping me or is it helping them? And I do try to, I've noticed it in very much the same way you had, Meryl, for various people. I would have expected this person to be more curious, more inquisitive, more, or I would have expected this, and I'm thinking about friends in particular as I'm talking about this, but, or less, okay, that's enough. You don't have to ask me, it's the same as last time, whatever the case may be. And another topic that I think each of you or some of you have brought up is this idea of living in these parallel lives that we all live, right? So we're all engaged in our lives actively, and we're fortunate to be physically able to do that, but we've all mentally and emotionally chosen to do that too. And when you do that, it also primes some people to, okay, we're back to baseline, we're back to engaging the way we used to before the diagnosis, and some people know, okay, I know that they're back at work, but there's a lot going on beneath the surface, and maybe let me check in on that.
Yes, and especially when systemic treatment is involved, there's a lot that we deal with on a daily basis physically, and it's hard. I don't want to say to hide that, but it's hard sometimes to carry on as normal, and I don't, because I don't think that's fair to my kids or my grandkids either, for them to think that I am carrying on as normal when I'm not feeling normal or whatever. So I'm very honest about that too. And it does have an impact as well.
Do any of you have a feeling about sort of balancing protecting your family versus disclosing everything to your family? Is that something that you've dealt with? Mostly with my own children, the issue is more about what are they ready for, and not, burdening is less of an issue with small children in this particular topic. But some of you guys with older kids, you may have a different perspective on it.
Real quick on that. I mean, I think there are times, and I've had some side effects from the immunotherapy and some of the systemic therapy that have limited, again, running the race versus walking the race. Again, that sounds like a horrible thing, but for someone that does that and the kids expect that, it was kind of hiding it, I would say. And then even more recently with some side effects, like you have to delay a trip because I have a skin infection from eczema that I've never had in my life before, but now I've got it. So whenever I can kind of manage through or push through, I think I was pushing through, not necessarily for them or to hide it from them, but also for myself to say, we're going on that trip. So I think there are times where maybe I should have hit pause, but for them and for my mental state at the time, it was, that's the goal. That's what we're doing. We're going to push through, and knock on wood, it hasn't hurt me yet, but I think there are times where I probably should hit pause. Actually, I'm lying to myself right now. I'm going to keep pushing through until I can't. But I think that's the way that I've historically hit it, is like, just because I feel a little bad, I don't want to, not go on the trip or whatever it may be. And I think the kids have picked up on that. Like, hey, are you sure you can go, Dad? And I've been pushing. So in hindsight, again, maybe you just need to pause and kind of think about that. But that's kind of been my, to your question, hiding it or not being as transparent about it. Sometimes I probably push a little too hard.
Yeah, and I think what really, I'll just add this in real quick, is that what really impacts this topic is that as parents, we are instinctually protective. I mean, our job is to protect our kids. It doesn't matter how old they are, how young they are. We have that instinctual desire to protect them, but you have to really ask yourself, where am I really protecting them? Am I protecting them by not telling them the truth or not letting them know what's really going on? And in my case, I just chose to go with like very open, honest information. And I think it's worked pretty well for us, but it's almost like fighting against nature to do that, because you do want to protect them all the time.
Thanks, Meryl. Yeah.
I try and sometimes with my girls use humor on some of the side effects and stuff, which are, sometimes, like, I have an hour commute to and from work each way. And when I was on immunotherapy, I had to stop at the bathroom a couple times. So I'm like, that's my QT. That's my Chick-fil-A, and we need to go to them now, because every morning I'm popping in there to go to the bathroom. They must wonder what the heck I'm doing, but I'm real comfortable at those places. And so we have our QT and our Chick-fil-A that we know they're the bathroom stops, and just things like that kind of are fun, not fun, but you gotta laugh, right? And that's kind of the stuff I share with them, with the side effects, and, oh, you never believe this, and they're kind of like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, well, so sharing, but trying to make it like we just gotta laugh, because dealing with it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm reminded. I've had with my 9-year-old now, I've had a few different versions of conversations. And I'm reminded in this conversation about one of them where I felt, he's too young to understand even the word cancer. This was when he was like 3 years old, and I had to go in for medicine. I was getting high-dose IL-2 at that time, very intensive treatment. So I was going to be away from the house for a week, and then back for a week, and then away for a week. Very confusing to a 3-year-old, right? So I used some phrasing around, Daddy has to go into the hospital to get medicine. And he said that he's gotten medicine and he doesn't like it. And I thought that was like perfect, in that moment, I was sharing just enough that he understood. And he shared back, and we understood each other, So I think that we actually have a question from the audience. I see that Tracy is on. Tracy, are you ready to ask your question?
Adam, yes, I am. Thank you. How do we help our children and grandchildren, and that includes our teens, adapt to ongoing treatment and uncertainty that comes with that? And that's for you or the panel.
Thank you. Yeah. So how do we help children and grandchildren, who are teens especially, adapt to ongoing treatment uncertainties around that? So, I mean, you said it in my prior life, I was a psychiatrist, I have to disclose. So it's one of the reasons I think the KidneyCAN team, gave me the baton to be a moderator here today. But, you said that uncertainty, that's like the magic word for anxiety, because uncertainty, not knowing how something's going to go, is the fuel for worry, right? It's the fuel for not knowing, and it could go this way, it could go this way, it could go this way. There's so many possibilities that your mind, if you're someone who is likely to experience anxiety, it's like adding fuel to that fire, so to speak. Anyone who's dealt with this with teenagers in particular want to take the first stab at it?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a mind game, mind over matter, in the sense of you just obviously we don't know what's going to happen, and you can go dark and go down these tunnels. Right now, I'm facing it again, so it's just been the last week that I found out about it. So my mind, the first few days, started going kind of like, oh no, this is it. This is going to all go downhill now. It can go so fast, and then a few days later, and you're telling people at work, and so there's some emotion, but you're trying not to, there's just a lot going on. But as time goes, try and get that spin and that positive, we don't know what's going to happen. I have no control over it, so I'm going to control what I can control. And that's day to day. I mean, I feel good. I do my 10,000 steps every day before I go to bed. If I'm crawling in, I'm in, but I got to get them done. And again, I'm usually going to work. I work from home a little bit now because of what happened, but and if I can do that, that's the best thing to keep me mentally sharp and going. So I'll let Meryl.
I'll add in a little bit on that, just to say that, I went with the knowledge is power route with myself and with my kids. And I think it really helped them to see me step up. I started getting involved with smart patients, which opened my eyes to where I need to be getting treated. A lot of things changed once I took that attitude, once I recovered from surgeries and then the mental breakdown that comes after that. And then also getting involved in advocacy. I think it really helped my kids to see that my energy was being put toward that, and they are proud of that work that I do. And also I think it helps them feel very hopeful, because I'm always telling them things like, you just keep kicking the can down the road and you stay alive until the next thing comes out. And we've seen in the last 9 years, I've seen so many approved treatments come along, and it really has, the entire landscape has changed because of the advocacy work that we do here at KidneyCAN, and because of the dollars that have been accrued for the research. And so I think that's helped my kids a lot. It doesn't make them feel like we're victimized, we don't know what to do. Of course there's uncertainty and we never know what's going to happen next, but there's something very powerful, empowering, I should say, about taking control and actually trying to do something about it. And I think that's helped a lot.
Yeah, I just want to add on, and thank you, Meryl and Carolyn, for sharing. And Tracy, great question. I'll take it more from the treatment perspective, and again, not necessarily a teenager, but going back to letting the kids know that I'm wiped out today, or even back to the parents, letting my parents know that I've got this rash or this GI issue, or the drugs. Any of these drugs really, and I'm a pharmacist by training, but they're all tough on the body, right? We're introducing things to kill something that shouldn't be in our body to begin with another thing that shouldn't be in our body. So there's going to be reactions, and all of us have different reactions. But I think kind of knowing what those are, and I always tell my kids, I'm this reaction hopefully is going to save my life, or this sacrifice that I go and get 3-hour injections, or these side effects. It's to combat what shouldn't be there. So I don't treat it as a badge of honor, but I treat it as, for me to beat this, we've got to, there are some sacrifices, and unfortunately, again, the drugs continue to get better, the cure rates get better, hopefully the side effects continue getting better, but it is a sacrifice. So again, whenever I have that question of, do you really need that treatment? If I want to beat this is the strategy that myself, my doctor, my caregiver, my lovely wife, and we've collectively decided this is the best path forward. And there's going to be challenges with it, and those challenges have to be met and faced and treated with another drug potentially, or what it may be. But I think back to kind of sharing why you feel that way, or why you're sacrificing and why you're doing it. I like to tell my kids it's so that we beat this. So.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I'm going to put my psychiatrist hat back on for a moment, because we've already mentioned humor earlier. And Meryl, what you were saying reminds me a lot of this concept about sublimation. So a lot of people have heard about defense mechanisms, and we think about it sort of negatively. Things like denial and repression. Those are more primitive defense mechanisms. Like if you tell someone shocking news, the first thing they'll say is no. That's a primitive, your brain rejecting the information. Some of the more mature defense mechanisms are using humor, like Carolyn was saying earlier. And there's a concept that fewer people use in their daily language about sublimation. So that's like using something very traumatic or some real conflict within, and devoting it toward something productive. And I mean, the value of that in our arena of dealing with kidney cancer, not only among patients, but among our families, and having agency by putting your energy towards something good and positive and making a difference, is such a huge opportunity as a way to manage that uncertainty that we were talking about earlier, because the uncertainty is not going anywhere. So managing it in this way is a very powerful, very useful concept, I think. Thank you for that question. I think there's another question from the audience. Veronica, if you're on and you're ready, I'd love to hear your question.
All right. Hi, everybody. Veronica McLaughlin, Indian Shores, Florida. And first, I just want to thank you all for volunteering to be on this and share your experience, strength, and hope. My husband was diagnosed literally 3 days after you were, Carolyn. So, yeah. And our daughters, 2 daughters, were sophomore and senior in high school. So it was right before the high school graduations and all of that, and planning to go away for college. And, now they're both away at college. And I just, I know this isn't the question, but I just have to say my oldest is going into DPT school starting in June. And so when you said your daughter's going PA, and now, it's kind of that like informational, like it's science, and she's interested. So anyway, my question is, how do you support, so it's more college-aged children, whether they're in college or not, but away from home. So, when my daughters would, how do you encourage them to continue just living their lives? Because a lot of times they would come home for breaks, and it would just be like the roller coaster of treatments and everything, right? And I swear, whenever they would be home for a quick break was when my husband was having a rough patch, and it's just that when they don't see him, because we're not really FaceTimers, when they don't see him that often, it's that kind of that stark, harsh, like startling, oh my gosh. And then they get kind of scared, like, well, maybe we shouldn't be going to school so far away, and maybe we shouldn't, and it's, how do you just encourage them, like, listen, you got to keep living your life, and so kind of, I guess specifically Meryl and Carolyn, because I think you both have gone through this, how do you encourage your children to just, they have a life that they need to continue to live, especially, yes, it's a roller coaster, and we'll let them know when the time comes, God willing, it doesn't come for a very, very, very long time, but just, hey, you got to keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, good question, Veronica. And I'm sorry, yeah, that's crazy, 2 days after my diagnosis. So speaking of my other daughter, so the one starting PA school, she'll be in Atlanta, but my other daughter, she just graduated, she's the one graduating in May with her degree in biomedical engineering. She actually, and we encourage this, she's going to, I'm Canadian, so I grew up in Canada, so she has dual citizenship. So she's actually going up to Toronto to do her master's in the fall. And I wouldn't have it any other way. She got into Georgia Tech too, but it made the most sense to go to Toronto. And there's, you know, she knows, I've told her, she obviously knows my update, and we're not going to change anything. You're going to go do what you're going to do, and I'm going to keep you updated with anything. And that's the big thing, is updates. Again, it depends too. I've been fortunate that I've had good updates, and I've been able to take trips and send pictures, and that makes a big difference. So, you know, I don't want to compare the two, because it's obviously very different if he's not feeling well and he's having some issues. But just keeping her updated and finding out what she's doing, and cheering her on from afar, knowing that she's doing what she should be doing. And I wouldn't want it any other way. And in fact, we would be miserable if she was here, because I actually feel better when they're away, because then I can just be me. And if I'm not feeling great, I can go lie on the couch and not feel like I'm letting anyone down. And whereas if they were here, I think I'd feel like I need to be doing more and helping and making meal, you know, and I don't really want to do that. So, you know, I think it's just keeping them informed, but also cheering them on. And Meryl, I'm sure you have plenty of.
The only thing I would add to that is that I think being an example is probably the biggest impact. Like, go on and lead your own life, do your thing, let them see you, you know, continuing on. You know, I go to music bingo, I do this and that, the things that I like to do, I kept doing. And so I would expect them to keep doing. And I think that that's where, you know, eventually as a family, we kind of settled into, I'll let you know if I need more kind of thing, but you need to live your lives. And I've said that a lot to them. And, but at the same time, they've always been there for me. So it's a good balance, but just being a good example is pretty important as much as you can.
Thanks, you.
Veronica. That was a great question. I'm seeing one in the chat that's really interesting, and I think that we should discuss it. So someone in the chat says that their dad is a very quiet person who doesn't talk much and doesn't show his emotions. This is how he's always been. Now that he's been diagnosed with renal cell carcinoma, going through treatments, he's still quiet, doesn't talk much or shows emotions. This is the complete opposite of what the panelists are talking about. So it would be helpful to get advice for family members who don't know how to talk to the family member who is sick. He doesn't appear to be depressed or anything. So I'll just start I'll just prime the conversation a little bit, and then I'd love to hear what others think. So the person who's asking this question ends by saying, listen, he's not depressed. Don't worry about it. He's not withdrawn and depressed where we have to worry that we need to help him. But his baseline preference was to keep things fairly close to the vest. Maybe that's where he's comfortable. And that hasn't changed in the course of this diagnosis. So what do you guys think about how you would approach a family member like that?
I'll chime in. I appreciate the question, and certainly, obviously, the individual that asked the question certainly cares about this individual, and sounds like, you know, that's kind of hitting close to home to that individual. So, you know, you're not going to change someone's personality. I'm not going to pretend to be a psychiatrist, but at the end of the day, you know, it's tough, and right, and if that's the individual's, you know, cloth they're cut from, but it doesn't mean that the family support may not be needed. Maybe they've never been asked that before because previous situations haven't been as dire as this one. So in my mind, the way that I would approach that, again, probably not one perfect answer, would be just to acknowledge that, hey, I know you're going through a tough time. Just wanted to make you aware that we're always here for whatever you need, and happy to talk to you, or keep mom away from you, or maybe back to the humor. Maybe there's a couple different approaches you could use, but I would want, if I was in a shoe, just that person to say, leave me the hell alone, pardon my language. I'm good. Just keep showing up on Sunday or whatever it may be, and for that peace of mind. But I think sometimes it just takes that check in. And if you haven't started there, maybe that's a good starting point. But please, other panelists, that's how I would approach it anyway.
I agree.
Yeah, I think just, knowing that you're there for them, and, sometimes it takes a step to do it, but, hold their hand and just, cuddle with, like, I don't know, obviously, but just, maybe try and reach in a bit more and
it's kind of like meeting them where they're at. Like we were talking about meeting our kids where they're at. Sometimes the kids have to meet us where we're at. And in this case, I think that is a good example of that, where that obviously the person who asked this question, she knows her dad and she's been aware of that. And so she should plan accordingly around that and like not push him too hard, because he just may not be his thing, and then just do what she can from that point on and meeting him where he's at.
Yeah, and just like that person dealing with the illness is not changing who they are, this relative is not changing who they are, and that's perfectly fine. We all come to this terrible place with the same strengths and burdens and challenges, and that everything that we walk into that day of diagnosis with, we're going to carry that forward. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is that I agree with everything the other panelists have said about how to approach your dad or not, but I also agree that you have needs and wants and desires, and they're important too. So one thing that I've noticed, and I didn't notice this intentionally or try to make this happen, but sometimes with certain people in my life, there's a little bit of like a shorthand that we develop. I know this person, where we don't have a touchy-feely relationship necessarily, so we have phrases that we say, like, are you good? Any updates? That kind of thing will be very useful. Figuring out that secret language that you can share with your dad that's comfortable for both of you. Striking that balance is very important, I think. I think I see Christine Collins is on. Hi, Christine.
Hi. Thanks so much for allowing me to join KidneyCAN in this. This has been an excellent conversation. I think so many people will take so much away from this. I am a patient, I'm a parent, a grandparent, and I'm also a patient advocate with Kidney Cancer Canada. And I really appreciate this opportunity to jump in and collaborate a little bit. And I do have a question because sometimes this is hard for people to manage, as you are also very busy people. How do you balance the time and energy between family and friends and medical care? And is there something, or what have you learned to let go of in order to accommodate?
Great question. Thank you, Christine.
I'll jump in here on this because I was thinking, Christine, I'm also a grandparent. I think I'm the only one on this actual panel. And I'll tell you from day one, that was something that was such a driving force in my desire to keep living and keep working towards cures and all the things that I put my time and energy into. My grandkids, I've been super blessed that in the less than 4 years, I've had 5 grandkids born. And this is what I dreamed of and what I cried about for months when I first got diagnosed, because I thought this day would never come. So I don't take it for granted for 1 second. But it is a balancing act. And that's what your question was regarding, because I don't have the energy sometimes that I want to have for these little ones. And I want to. That's the difference. Like I want to be there. I want to help my kids. I want to take care of them. I want them to know me. I want to make memories with them and do things, but I just don't always have the energy. So I think it's a balance between taking care of yourself and making sure that you're okay. It's kind of like the whole in the airplane, put the mask on yourself first, or you're not going to be able to help the kids that are traveling with you. It's kind of the same thing. Like I have to take care of myself. I have to have enough rest. I have to say no a lot of times when I don't want to, because it wouldn't be good for me or them if I'm just feeling terrible, which can happen when you're on systemic treatment from time to time. But it means so much to me that I do make a big effort to balance that, because that is my biggest concern. My grandkids are too little to talk about like how I told them. They don't know anything about it. But one time it nearly broke my heart because one of my little grandsons said something about grandma sits down a lot when she's with us. And I was just like, oh, I don't want that to be what he thinks of me or how he remembers me or anything like that. Like it really got to me and made me really think hard about, I'd rather be rested and see him when I can play with him more than be the grandma that just sits down all the time. So it's tricky. It's very tricky. And like I said, I don't want to say no sometimes, but sometimes I have to say no to helping the kids with the grandkids and stuff like that. But it's an ongoing issue for me, for sure.
Christine, I'll chime in. Thank you, Meryl. Again, great insight. Someone mentioned earlier we can only control what we can control. I'm a bit type A, and we kind of plan everything. So I always say plan what you know, whether that's a trip, a treatment, a baseball game, the kids' testing schedule. Like what you know, probably 70% of your activities. Put it on paper. And again, things could happen, things can change. But if you can control what you can control, then the rest of the time you can be sporadic. You could go, with my friends, we probably only get together a handful of times a year, and it used to be kids' birthday parties. Now it's fantasy football or talking about the stock, whatever it may be. Times have changed, but a sporadic happy hour, showing up at your parents' house unannounced, or going over to see your brother and his kids on a Sunday versus, watching football all day or whatever it may be. Again, I'm just giving examples of how I've done it. Because again, I think if you try to divide it up amongst everyone fairly, it's fairly impossible. And then also combining events. I mean, there's sometimes where we all have treatment and we'll go out to dinner as a family and invite my brothers and their family to go out afterwards if I'm feeling great and things are good. Like, so sometimes you can kind of piggyback some things, but I think it's about, making sure others know you're there, making sure that you're selfishly having a good time and enjoying your life because you've been dealt a difficult situation. So in my mind, have as much fun as you can any day that you can. And then all the other things that you can control and put on paper and plan for. Again, things change. You have to flex and adapt. But for me, every time I get my scan done, I go plan my next one. It's scheduled. It's on the book. It's on the work calendar. Secretary, it's planned. But again, it can change, but I don't have to worry about that till that day unless something else comes up, right? So knock on wood. But that's kind of how it's helped me and my family.
Yeah, I think similar to Ryan, just keeping the calendar full and keeping things scheduled. Trips for me, that's a big thing. I'm trying to get to as many places as I can. We're trying to work from far away backwards. So as things, progress down the road or anything, that we've tackled the far away places first. So we're booking those. We've had to cancel things. And then with my kids off at school, then I don't have as much responsibility, which is kind of nice, but I do have a full-time job, and I mentioned the commute, so that's really keeps me pretty busy. But I work a lot of lunches and things in with friends to just keep me focused and keep me moving forward, have that support.
Thank you. You brought up a point, I noticed particularly with Ryan, that we really have to grab on to those little moments of joy and fellowship. And, I think all of us and all of the audience too, who has had a diagnosis or a loved one with a diagnosis, it really does change how we feel and think about things, and our loved ones too. And that was something I had to learn the hard way, is you really have to grab, Carolyn, you like to go on a trip, so you've got to go for it and have those memories to, hold you up. And Ryan, like dinner with your brother and Merle playing with the grandchildren, like those precious little moments, you have to grab onto them and hold on to them. And it really does help you get through. Thank you so much for your answers and your conversation. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. I see another question. I'm going to read this one. It was submitted just prior to the meeting. And I think this is a really interesting, difficult topic, so I'll prep you for that. How do you talk to my family members about their own risk and possible testing? This is a really tricky one because we know in most cases there are certain familial forms of kidney cancer where people with VHL deficiency are, it's a known commodity in terms of the risk that's involved. But most cases of kidney cancer are what we call sporadic, where they've come up and there's no clear defining reason why that happened to you or me or anybody else. Only after I was diagnosed did I find out that like one of my great-grandparents had a kidney operation. We don't really know the details. And one of his children, but not my grandfather, had kidney cancer. So there's a polymorphic kind of genetic risk polynomic polygenetic risk that's known. I have yet to have any conversations with my children, but certainly, with my own other adult family members, my brother, my parents, I think about these things, and I think about it for my children. I think, gosh, I really hope that there's a simple blood screening test by the time that they're of age, How do the other folks on the panel think about this issue, if at all?
I've just talked to my kids about the fact that they need to make sure that their physicians know that they have this family history, which is fairly common anyway when you're filling out forms and everything that, they do ask you about that. But I think it's important. I don't know of any genetic factor in my own diagnosis, but because of that, because of the fact that I was fairly young, not the under 46 young, which is immediately flagged as potentially a genetic situation, but I do make sure that they let their own physicians know that they have that risk factor. Other than that, I really don't know. I'm sure it'll be on their minds, just like it's on mine, that hoping that they'll be fine and that there's no genetic connection here.
Yeah, I just told my daughter. I just told my oldest one, the PA school, and I said, "Oh, now you're always going to have to check that box every time you fill out your form when you go in." Sorry,
but sorry, not sorry though. Like it's good that they know that they have that information.
Yeah.
I'll answer this from a young kid perspective, and certainly besides soldiers coming home, kids talking about cancer, it breaks my heart, and it's tough. So I did the genetic testing as well because I was under 46, and certainly nothing was flagged, which is good, but still sporadic. Or I found out that a third cousin had kidney cancer. So again, some of these weird things that Adam just mentioned as well. But I think with my kids, I never say that don't worry about it, but I think I'm definitely more protecting. Like, no, you're healthy, you're good, and if anything happens, we'll have a plan, or that's why we go to the doctor. That's why we eat healthy. So for me, it's more of encouraging a healthy lifestyle, and that, your kid, you're okay, you'll be safe. And that's why I'm going to beat this. So I think it's some of that deflating. At the end of the day, for me, it's a tough question, especially from a young kid. So for right now, my approach is more keeping it all positive, depending on their age. And then as Meryl alluded to, as they get older, you definitely need to be telling your physician that, if you have a kidney stone, or if you have kidney pain, or if you have these symptoms, please go get checked, is kind of the approach I'm taking. So it's a tough question.
There's also this concept specifically around kidney cancer. It's more broad to all cancers, but specifically in kidney cancer, when it's caught super early, it's incredibly curable with a fairly straightforward surgery or procedure. And so knowing the risk is, to quote the G.I. Joes, is half the battle. And then what you do with that, informing your medical team as you get older, as you become, reach into adulthood, just being aware of it, and so that they can, take any necessary screening measures when that day should come. So I'm noticing that we're getting toward the top of the hour. I want to really, from the bottom of my heart, thank the other panelists. I want to thank everybody who has joined the call, everybody maybe watching in the future. Thanks for taking the time and attention. Please support KidneyCAN as best you can. And I want to hand it back to Brian Lewis. Brian?
All right. Great. Adam, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the insights from everybody today on the call. It was fascinating, and as somebody already pointed out, there's some really rich nuggets in here that I think a lot of our community will appreciate. That being said, I also have to thank all of our sponsors. Again, we couldn't do this without you. Thank you to those folks that believe in these kinds of community gatherings. On that note as well, I think there is going to be the community possibility to gather after this that folks will have. That should be in the chat as well. Again, Adam, thank you so much for your insights and for moderating. Meryl, congratulations for every day that you keep being with us. We love it. And Ryan, way to keep fighting. And Carolyn, appreciate everything that you were doing as well. We know that scans are going to come out wonderfully. So thank you all for being with us. Folks, we're going to have another town hall coming up. Keep your eyes out. We'll be sending some notes out on that. And with that, I just want to wish you all a happy spring and a healthy spring. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.